Welcome to this presentation on transfer procedures. I'm Janine Daniels and I will be taking you through this topic. This presentation will deal with transfer requirements, transfer procedures, and accounting records. I will also take you through an illustrative example and discuss the steps you should follow to account for transfers in the accounting records of an attorney's practice. In an attorney's practice, there's generally two sets of accounting records: business records and trust records. Included in trust records, you'll find a trust bank account, a trust creditor's control account, and a trust creditor's ledger. A trust bank account is a check bank account or equivalent established by the firm to hold client funds. Money deposited into a trust account is referred to as trust money and may represent fees paid in advance, security deposits, or any money held on behalf of clients. Funds deposited into a trust account are not property of the firm. A person to whom the trust money belongs is called a trust creditor. A trust creditor is a liability. In the general ledger, there'll be a trust creditor's control account, which is a summary of all transactions related to trust money. And in addition to this, there'll be a trust ledger containing detailed and specific information of each trust creditor. Let's assume the total trust money received for March is 20,000 Rand. And this 20,000 Rand comprises of 8,000 Rand belonging to Mrs. A, 5,000 Rand to Miss B, and 7,000 Rand to Mr. C. On receipt of the money, we would debit the trust bank account with 20,000 Rand and credit the trust creditor's control account with 20,000 Rand. And in the trust ledger, for further details about where this 20,000 Rand is coming from, we would credit Mrs. A with 8,000 Rand, credit Miss B with 5,000 Rand, and credit Mr. C's account with 7,000 Rand. The attorney may transfer money from the trust account to the business account if the attorney performed a service to the client and the client made provision for the payment of the service in advance. The prepaid amount would then be available in the trust account, and the attorney is then entitled to transfer money out of the trust account into the business account. Before a transfer is made from the trust to the business account, certain requirements should be met. The client should owe an amount to the practice, and funds should be available on his or her trust account in order to do the transfer. If the amount owed by the client exceeds the amount available in his or her trust account, the amount transferred is limited to the amount available. And if the amount available in the client's trust account exceeds the amount owing to the attorney, the amount transferred is limited to the amount owing. Also, the client should consent to the transfer. In terms of the procedures, the client's business and trust account should be regularly compared to determine the amounts that should be transferred, and transfers should be done at least once a month. The transfer must be recorded in the transfer journal and can be done via check or electronic transfer. Once the transfer or check is received, the money should be entered in the respective cash books. Let's look at an example. Consider the following information in the records of XYZ attorneys. The business cash book has a balance at 31 March 2020 of 40,000 Rand. The trust cash book has a balance at 31 March 2020 of 20,000 Rand. The trust creditors control account balance at 31 March 2020 is 20,000 Rand, and the trust ledger balances at 31 March 2020 are 8,000 Rand belonging to A. Andrews, 5,000 Rand belonging to B. Bond, and 7,000 Rand belonging to C. Calvin. During March, the attorneys performed services to A. Andrews for 3,000 Rand, B. Bond for 2,000 Rand, and C. Calvin for 2,500 Rand. The records impacted by the transactions are the business cash book, the trust cash book, the transfer journal, the general ledger, the client's ledger, and the trust creditor's ledger. Pause the recording to prepare the relevant accounting records. Also, record the given information from the scenario. Whenever you are presented with a question like this, start off by preparing the required accounting records and entering the information that is available, such as opening balances and transactions. After you have prepared the applicable accounting records and entered the available information, the next step, which is the first step in the transfer process, is to record the transfer entries in the transfer journal. Here, you must debit each person's trust account and credit their business accounts with the value of the services rendered. The value of the services rendered is the amount the attorneys are entitled to transfer. Please remember that what they can transfer is limited to what they are owed. The next step is to record the payment in the trust cash book to reflect the transfer to the business bank account. The entry should be made on the payment side, and the amount is the sum of the three transfers, which is 3,000 Rand in respect of A. Andrews, plus 2,000 Rand in respect of B. Bond, plus 2,500 Rand in respect of C. Calvin. Altogether, this is 7,500 Rand. Take note, the entries recorded in the sundries and bank columns and as a description in order to indicate where the money is going, we write business bank. Since there was an opening balance of 20,000 Rand and 7,500 Rand is transferred out of the trust account, the new balance is 12,500 Rand. Next, the receipt should be processed in the business cash book. On the receipts side, the total amount of 7,500 Rand should be recorded in the sundries and bank columns. The description is trust bank in order to indicate where the money is coming from. Since there was an opening balance of 40,000 Rand and 7,500 Rand is transferred into the account, the new balance is 47,500 Rand. Next, the general ledger must be updated by debiting the business bank account and crediting the trust bank account. This will bring the balances to 47,500 and 12,500 Rand respectively. Then, credit the client's control account and debit the trust creditor's control account. The client's control account will now have no balance. This is because the client's debt was settled by the transfer of the client's money from the trust account, and hence the attorneys have no further right to receive money from them. The trust creditors control account will now have a balance of 12,500 Rand. Next, the trust creditors ledger should be updated by debiting each person's trust account. After adjusting for the transfers, A. Andrews will have a balance of 5,000 Rand. B. Bond will have a balance of 3,000 Rand. And C. Calvin will have a balance of 4,500 Rand. If you add the three closing balances, you'll get 12,500 Rand, which is also the balance on the trust creditors control account. The last step is to update the client's ledger by crediting each person's business account to reflect the payment out of the trust accounts. Revise the six-step approach to accounting for transfers. Practice by referring to the scenario given in the example in this presentation and record the entries in your workbook without looking at the answers. Only refer to the solution to check and mark your workings. Please ensure you put in a lot of practice in order to get comfortable with the process.